All right, at this time, I will call the April 27, 2022 meeting of the Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District Board of Trustees meeting to order. I'll remind participants and staff here to let's silence our cell phones or electronic devices. And at this time, we'll ask for a roll call from the clerk.
Barnes. Here. Chaplin. Here. Delgado.
Here.
Fiscal. Hannon. Here. Nudo.
Here.
Dial.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. At this time, we'll approve our agenda for today's meeting. We will not be having a closed session as is noted at the end of the agenda. We will not. It's not necessary.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if during this portion of the meeting that I could ask the board to consider having two items placed on future agendas.
Go ahead.
One is on, in looking at some of our documents today, kind of a review of ridership of pre-pandemic and with some goals in mind of trying to achieve pre-pandemic numbers, assuming we get drivers that, you know, can add to the routes. But my concern is that there's habits that form, and maybe we need to break some habits. But we spend a fair amount on marketing, and I think we should try and target, in light of the problems with gasoline prices and things, I think we have an opportunity to target people outside of the ridership on campus. And so I'd like to have that considered and studied with your administration, your team. The second thing is, and I brought this up before, I'd like to have a consideration for a special committee to review real estate related issues on purchasing and leasing, probably comprised of experts outside of our board, real estate, commercial people, appraisers in the commercial field, and lawyers and the attorneys in the commercial field, for assisting the director. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comment or anything we want to touch on right now? Margaret?
I move that we adopt the agenda as revised.
Anybody want to second that?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt our agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Audience participation. Anyone in the audience want to participate? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of our, whoops, sorry, I'm jumping ahead, jump right over it. Let's back up. At this time, we will be holding a public hearing on the Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Grant application. The primary purpose of this hearing is to receive input from the public on a project for which financial assistance is being sought from the Illinois Department of Transportation through the Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program. The grant application is seeking funding for the following: replacement of 3 medium-duty paratransit vehicles for ADA services and replacement of 1 street supervisor minivan. Beginning on April 5th, 2022, the project description was posted on the district's website, mtd.org, under inside/documents/public hearings for public review. The notice of public hearing appeared in the News Gazette on April 7th, 2022, and the affidavit of publication is available for inspection. Are there any comments from the public? Seeing and hearing none, and I assume we've had nothing come in online or anything? Okay. Since there are no public comments, I declare this public hearing on the Illinois Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program application to be closed. All right. Now, we've done audience participation. Now we'll go to approval of our minutes from our board meeting, open session, March 30th, 2022. It's been moved and approved it's been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes from March 30th, 2022 as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Communications from board members or staff? Seeing none. The proposed service plan fiscal year 2023 presentation.
Yeah, I'm going to have Jay Rank, Operations Director, come up and give a presentation to you about what our current plans are for fall service in light of the aforementioned employee shortage that Alan just spoke of.
Yeah, hi everybody, Jay Rank, Operations Director. Yeah, so I'm going to give a brief overview, kind of high level of what our plan is for our service starting in August. Just want to start the presentation. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so basically an overview is I'll give a slide about our staffing, and including where we were a couple of years ago and where we're at now, the concept of what we're proposing, and then our both long and short-term service recovery plans. Next slide, please. Okay, so in 2019, you can see we had basically 194 operator full-time equivalent, and that's 130 full-timers, 77 part-time, which we count as basically 3/4 of a full-time equivalent based on an average of their hours, about 30 hours a week, in retirees who have worked about 50%, about 20 hours a week on average for that calculation. And for reference, we had 126 weekday runs at the time. Fast forward to early this spring, we were down to 175 full-time equivalents, and at the moment, 166. So that's where we currently stand. And you'll recall our most recent cut was mid-January to adjust to a sustainable service approach. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a little simple animation of what we're proposing for several of our campus routes, and it's for illustration purposes. Say there's a 30-minute each direction, a 60-minute headway route, which for 10-minute frequency would take 6 buses. They're spaced 10 minutes apart, and they go along the route. Okay, so what happens when we're short operators and we can't fill the runs is we take out buses out of that, and it leaves a gap in our service. So that's basically the situation what we're dealing with right now on campus is a lot of routes have gaps in them based on scheduled assignments that we didn't have people for, and we pulled the runs. So the approach for this coming year, knowing that we're still going to be short, would be to kind of even everything out and make them 15-minute gaps in between. So it's a reduction in frequency, but it's an improvement in consistency. So that's ultimately what we're planning on doing on several routes on campus. And this is a very basic example. It's more complicated on real life routes that have different endpoints, like the teal. Sometimes it ends at PAR, sometimes it ends at Orchard Downs. So it's not always this simple, but for illustration purposes, this is really effective, I think. Next slide, please. Okay, you can step forward a little bit. Okay, so the plan then is to do this for the Illini route is one of four basically that we're doing: the Illini, the teal, the gold, and the silver. And right now, or normally, there's 8 buses on the Illini for the weekday, and at the moment we have 6. So we're in the situation where we've pulled out one of the two of the assignments, and it's got frequencies that aren't even. Sometimes it's 10-minute frequency in between, sometimes it's 20. Likewise, in the evening, we have 5 buses instead of 7. So the plan in the fall would be to have 5 buses, 15-minute frequency during the day, and 4 buses in the evening at 20-minute frequency. For the teal, similar, we normally have 4 buses or 5 buses depending on the time of day, and it has 10-minute frequency on campus and 20-minute frequency to Orchard Downs, and 2 buses in the evening which provide 20-minute service. And at the moment we have gaps sometimes of 30 minutes on campus and sometimes 30 to 50 minutes at Orchard Downs. So that's not ideal, and we're proposing then fixing that as best we can. There's still going to be some 20-minute gaps, but it should be more consistent than we're operating now. Next slide, please. Okay, the silver route is, similar. I mean, these all kind of follow the same trend here, where right now then in the fall we're proposing 3 buses, 15-minute frequency, and then 1 bus actually in the evening, which 40-minute frequency, which would be the first thing we would try to fix if we had more people. And then the gold route, we're actually coming up with a brand new schedule for, and have found a way to create a single assignment that's a hopper, and that we could pull that one out, and we would have more reasonable service or more efficient service, I should say. Okay, next. So that was our campus stuff. I want to point out that this isn't all campus cuts, that we also will still have community route cuts. And this shows that the yellow route, the red route, the green express, the green, the gray, the navy, the pink, the lime, the link, and safe rides all have cuts that are planned to remain. And we're not looking at addressing those schedules because it's not as, I guess, convenient to fill in the gaps and make smaller headways on community routes, because the gaps are much larger, and having the set frequencies or the set schedules we feel are more important, and it helps us fill in the gaps if we have people to run the routes. So if we were to change the frequencies and try to make the gap smaller, in effect we would be closing up any hole to fill with an extra bus. So that's the plan for the community routes as well. So our short-term restoration plan then is to basically fill show runs with available operators that we have, anybody that we have extra that we can schedule, and then apply those to campus routes, high frequency routes, and restore some of that service or back it up. So we know that there's full loads at dorms, 20 minutes before classes. So we can back those trips up or put a bus in front and carry the load so that the regularly scheduled bus doesn't get overloaded. So we would be using those hours in essence to prove that we can, we've got the hours available, the workforce available to commit to some of our community routes. So the idea would be to say, okay, we're regularly filling these runs here, and that makes us believe that we can afford to commit to restoring a Navy route or a Pink route or a Lime route or something like that. So that's how we plan to prove to ourselves that we've got the workforce to do so. Now, we need to do so carefully because we don't want to have days where we can't, we don't have the people to do it. So, you know, if Friday's a hard day for us to fill, we don't want to get to a position where, yeah, we're going to provide this route every day except Friday. So we want to monitor this carefully and feel confident that we've got the people to do the runs before we commit to the service. So that is basically what we are looking at doing. It's, again, a very high-level overview. We are planning a public hearing or a couple events. May 16th, we're planning a Zoom live event where we talk about the details of the schedules. And we're looking to have the traditional public hearing here at IT Eleanor Terminal at May 18th from 4 to 6 p.m. So at that point, we'll have all the details, ready to go.
I think Bruce has a question for you, Jay.
Yeah, just, can you post all these changes, or at least say schedule changes temporary due to driver shortage on all the displays? Can you go that far?
On the kiosks or on the
If
shelter
that's
boards?
advisable, I do it, and maybe maybe that's advertising for drivers too, so.
Yeah. On all of our shelter boards, we have an image about the shortage. Yeah.
Right. Let people know why they're being changed.
Yeah.
Phil.
Jay, if I recollect, last year, we signed a contract for a service that would put our live bus locations out onto some sort of feed that maybe Google or other companies could incorporate into their apps. You know, these kids are all on their phones all the time. But I was just playing on the phone here while you were talking, checking the Google Maps transit route, like if I wanted to go to Illini Union, and right now it looks like it's still saying, hey, the bus is scheduled for a specific time. It doesn't know real-time locations. So where are we at on getting that contract done? I know it had quite a bit of lead time.
Yeah. Carl, do you know?
There is quite a development time for that. So the contract that you approved was probably 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago that you approved the work, and they are developing that now. To be perfectly honest with you, we thought it would be done before the end of this fiscal year. And they have told us with no uncertain terms that it will not be completed by the end of this fiscal year. They, like everybody else, they are struggling with their internal resources and the amount of work that they have to get done. And we're in the queue. They are working on it, but we're still many months away from that being active. The real-time information, real quick, it's not active on Google, but it is active on our own services, and you can text and get real information. You can go to our mobile website and get real-time information. It's just not Google that it's active in yet.
And are we, reaching out to our riders and explaining, hey, you can get this real-time information through those sources?
Yeah, we always are messaging real-time information on Facebook and Twitter and our schedule books on our shelter boards that Jay was referencing earlier.
Very good.
Yep.
Jay, I've got a question, and you probably touched on it in some portion of your. So with this scheduling change, I'm not sure how our routes or frequency impacts people that are coming and going from classes, and I'm sure that that's a consideration. Could you go into how this schedule change might impact the largest part of our?
Yeah. Well, I didn't address that specifically. We have regular frequencies on many of our routes, and you know, we traditionally aim for 10 minutes on these high frequency routes, and next fall it'll be 15 minutes. And in terms of class schedules, they change on Monday, Wednesday, Friday versus Tuesday and Thursday. So we've always had kind of operational issues at different times of days for each day. So we've never tried to tailor schedules specifically to class schedules, but that the frequencies should help. And we do know, our control center knows that on certain days we have certain overloads. We have cameras in our control center at the dorms and on campus where we can see if there's overloads. So, you know, if there's a bus that goes through and it doesn't pick everybody else up, and we've got another bus in the vicinity, we'll send it through as well.
Sure.
So that's sort of how we deal with that.
Sure, and I'm sure it would be more helpful for riders to be aware that there's going to be a bus every 15 minutes rather than two buses come 10 minutes apart and then the next one might be 20 minutes. So
Yeah.
at least if there's a regular schedule, they can feel more confident that they might wait another minute
Yeah.
or two for something to come down the street.
Yeah,
correct?
I mean, I think that's
Okay.
very clear, yeah.
All right, very good. Any other questions for the board on the report from Jay? All right, go ahead.
I had a question for the schedule that goes through on the text, like one that where you text the number on the sign. Which one is that lined up with the schedule or the real time like MTD bus map?
That's lined up with our schedule, our real-time information, but it is a snapshot from the second that you text it, right? So it doesn't update. So we always push the apps that's the preferred methods, because those do update as the bus goes along. But yeah, the text messages do take a snapshot of the actual bus tracking at the moment that you've sent it. Yeah.
Yeah, the apps are good. The best method is to use the mobile website that our software development team has put together. That functions much like an app on your phone, and it will update by itself. It's super easy to use. That's really the best method to get it. Some of the apps they've been around for a while and they haven't really been updated much. The website is updated. It works great, and it's the best way. Texting is totally fine, but Jay's right. It is a single snapshot, and so it can get out of sync with reality fairly quickly, depending on what's going on out on the street.
Okay, thanks. That was a great question. All right. Anything else on this item? If not, we will move right into Carl's Managing Director report.
Okay, thanks, Jay. This is for March, and our monthly ridership in March, there were 766,766 rides, and that is double what we were in March of last year. As Alan noted, it is still down from pre-pandemic levels, but quite honestly, it's about all that we can handle right now, given our capacity constraints due to the employee shortage. We want to grow the ridership back to where we were and beyond, but we have to be able to have the room on the bus to do that. Moving on to the year-to-date, excuse me, year-to-date is up 122%. We're at 5.7 million compared to 2.5 million. And the March ridership by year, you can see on this table, we've been showing you this for a year or so now, and I think it's really illustrative. You can see the 2019 March ridership was 1.1 million, and then March was the first month of the pandemic shutdown, and so we lost a couple of weeks there, and it dropped dramatically in 2020. And then 2021, we were full on in the pandemic, and so it's great to see that we're double that in 2022, the gray bar there, and so we are recovering. All right, the operating revenue is 56.6% above March of last year, and the year-to-date operating revenue was 67.1% above last year. The operating expenses in March were 3.1% above March of 2021, and the year-to-date operating expenses were 9.3% above FY 2021. As far as the budget is concerned, we are the revenue budgeted we're $499,892, so just a few bucks short of $500,000 above what we budgeted, and the expenses we are $4.5 million below budget. And with that, the only thing I want to bring to the board's attention, you may have seen this in the news. I kind of got caught between a rock and a hard place when I put the board packet together. It was before this happened, and then this announcement came out before the board meeting, so I didn't have a chance to get this out in front of you. But last Friday, on April 22nd, the Federal Transit Administration released a list of 10 transit agencies nationwide that they awarded an honor to. So there were, I don't know, I think around 200 transit agencies that signed up for the FTA's Sustainable Transit for a Healthy Planet initiative, and we were one of them. And then we won the honor of being the most innovative of all of those transit systems because of our hydrogen fuel cell electric bus program and our hydrogen production station that is solar powered. And so that was exciting because we didn't know that it was happening. It wasn't something that we applied for. We had voluntarily signed up for the initiative, but we didn't know that they were releasing awards with that. And so that was a pleasant Friday afternoon note that we got from the Federal Transit Administration. So with that, I will answer any questions through page 41.
Any questions from the board on Carl's report or anything in addition there? Phil.
Carl, I guess we didn't make it a formal motion, but would you guys be able to consider some of Alan's suggestions when you're putting together next month's agenda?
Yeah, we can do that. You want both of them on next month's agenda?
Alan, it's your motion. What do you think?
I think one at a time, to allow you guys to research some things. Questions that I had in your backup here, on monthly passes, for example. I'm hoping that with this gas shortage, our gas pricing things, that we could be more creative on how to reach commuters that are not part of the school system, the university system. And I've done a little bit of research, but I'm not prepared to. I think I'd like to share it with some of your staff and just see what they can find. But I think one at a time.
Yeah, okay. Then absolutely, those items will both appear on upcoming agendas, and we'll do one at a time.
Super. If there are no other questions on Carl's report, go ahead, Tomas.
Hi, Carl. congratulations on the recognition and congratulations to staff on that's really great. And knowing that, you know, I'm in a community that has a prioritization for just environmental efficiency makes me really proud. And I was wondering if those sorts of accolades are like factored into campaigning for bringing in new drivers. Like, is that sort of a part of that process, like to allure new drivers and new employees that, you know, they can be a part of a district that is commended in that kind of a way?
That's a great idea. I wish I could say that we were doing that. This just happened on Friday, so we haven't done much with it. But I really like that idea, and so I'm certain that Amy and I will we can have a conversation with the marketing manager about kind of blending that message into our hiring campaign. That's a great idea.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
That is a great idea, and I mean, I always like to think that we've been on kind of the cutting edge of technology and innovation all along, so this probably shouldn't have been much of a surprise, but it's nice to be surprised by something occasionally, a nice surprise anyway, so congratulations to staff and for all the work that you all have put together and the thoughtfulness and the planning that's gone into pulling that program together. All right. Our next item on our agenda is resolution number 2022-4, the Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program. Ms. Sullivan.
Okay, I am on page 42 of your packet. This resolution, this action item is related to the public hearing we had just before the board meeting started. So it's for a state grant, which is called the Consolidated Vehicle Procurement Program. And essentially, this Illinois Department of Transportation has federal funding that they use to do a bulk purchase of vans. A couple different types of vans, but ones that we use for our ADA paratransit service, and also vans that we use for our that our supervisors use. So they have opened up the opportunity this year for transit agencies to submit applications, and in order to submit the application, we need the board to pass this resolution. And so our application, like we said at the public hearing, includes 3 medium-duty paratransit vans for ADA service and 1 supervisor minivan. So those 3 ADA vans will replace our oldest ADA vans, they're year 2014, and that supervisor van will replace our oldest and highest mileage supervisor van. I think I'll stop there. There's no local funding. I'll just add there's no local funding required for this grant, but the value of those 4 vehicles it is $287,000. So that's the value of the grant. And I will stop there.
Questions on this item from the board? Correct me if I'm wrong, the supervisor vans also have capacity to be used for people with disabilities.
Yeah, they are accessible vehicles, and they occasionally transport passengers.
Okay, as needed.
Yeah,
sort of. Yes.
yeah, thank you.
Great. Anything else from the board? Seeing none, I'll ask. Sorry, Brianna, go ahead.
I had a question. Is it worth keeping like any of the older vans as like a backup, or are they just kind of at the end of life and it's time for them to just move on?
Yeah, good question. They are nearing end of life, and actually there's a huge shortage in the equipment needed for these ADA vans. So it's if we're awarded this grant, it could be something like 2 years until we receive the vehicles. But anyway, they're nearing useful life, and we can't. There are requirements on how many spares we keep, and we don't really need the spares. We have the number of total vans we have, which is 14 total ADA vans and 5 total supervisor vans. We don't need additional spares.
Bruce.
These small vans, will go out and, in case a bus breaks down, right? Or
Are you talking about the supervisor van, the minivan?
these kind of large white vans.
Yeah, no, those are used for our ADA paratransit service, so, which is a door-to-door service for persons with disabilities or for some reason can't use our regular fixed route.
But what happens if a bus breaks down to all the people that are on the bus?
Another bus is sent.
Is it, oh, another bus?
Yeah, so that's what our spare
Yeah,
buses.
so is this service van, what I'm getting at is a driver demand. This service demand that you mentioned first, is that a driver in the sense of this driver shortage? Or is this a special kind of driver?
Both vans, the supervisor van and the ADA paratransit vans, are not the same drivers that drive our fixed route big buses.
So that's not what you're short of.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
If I can just tag on to that, we call them ADA drivers. That's a broad term for this special paratransit service that we do. They are licensed differently than our bus drivers, the fixed route big bus drivers. But we do also use these vans for Safe Rides service, and we use them, which is our small van campus late night service, and we also use them for when it's running and we're able to run this service. We use it for the West Connect service in Southwest Champaign. So we do use those vans for a variety of purposes.
Yeah, so, but no matter what the use is, it isn't a regular bus driver. He isn't required to be the skill of a regular driver.
It is a highly skilled driver that goes through our training program, and we do have a shortage of that driver pool as well, but it's a much smaller shortage than the large amount of openings that we have on the fixed route side.
They don't have as intensive training.
It's not, yes, they do not use CDLs. That's a commercial driver's license.
Right. Thank you.
Phil.
So we've traditionally used the Braun caravans, right, on these? And these would be probably just converting over to the Voyagers now, essentially, the Chrysler version?
I don't know if we have the exact model, but
It'll be what we get. So the state kind of chooses what
Exactly,
is
yeah.
going on with these.
yeah.
But they have to meet by America, and so I think they're going to be Ford chassis. That's what they have now, and I believe that's what the CVP program will utilize.
We have Ford, or are these mini
Yes.
buses like E350 based
Correct.
buses? So the supervisor
350
vans are
and
mini
450.
vans.
The supervisor van is a minivan. I think that's a Dodge Caravan or
Right.
something like that.
So those
but the larger number of the fleet is the paratransit, and that's the Ford E350 and E450 that we have.
Okay. And the state chooses those models, then we send the old ones back to Springfield to be surplus, basically.
We don't send them back. We discontinue. We have to sell them. We auction them off. Relative to the earlier question, they're well utilized at that point, and I think they're generally used for scrap. at
Where do
that
we
point.
auction them?
We have a public auction website that we are a member of, and so all our old equipment. I'm not remembering the name of it off the top of my head, but it's a Pardon? Public
Nice.
surplus.
This is,
Margaret, go ahead.
yeah, I say this is kind of off the side, but in the contract that we have with DRES to provide service, do they provide the vehicles or do we provide their vehicles?
DRES and DSC, who are the two entities that we have contracts with to provide some of the paratransit service in the community, they have their own vehicles and their own drivers.
Okay. Any other questions on this item? So to be clear, we're applying for this, we're hopeful to get the funding, but we may not see the vehicles for an extended period of time, but we need to get in the system to make this happen, correct?
Yes, the application is due May 2nd.
Very good. All right. No other questions from the board. I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve Resolution 22-4 for vehicle procurement.
So move.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this item. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Our next item on our agenda is our zero emission transition plan.
So these next two action items are both related to a grant that we plan to submit at the end of May for some additional hydrogen fuel cell buses and an expansion to our hydrogen fueling station. So the first one is a new requirement of this grant funding. This is the same grant program that we received some funding that initially launched our hydrogen project. It's called LONO, Low or No Emissions Bus Grant, and it's through FTA. And actually, FTA released two grants at the same time, two grant opportunities, Low No and another one which is called Bus and Bus Facilities, and they're encouraging agencies to submit the same application for both programs, and you could be funded from each. So that's why you see reference to both in here. Anyway, this first action item is a new requirement of this funding is that agencies have a zero emission transition plan. And as you've seen, MTD has been following a plan, but we haven't quite formalized it in this way. So what you have in your packet is the draft plan, and which we hope to include in our application. For the application, I'll get into this more in the next item, but the application is for 10 40-foot fuel cell buses and the expansion of the fueling station and some training and consulting services. So the grant doesn't require that the board approves the plan or anything, but we wanted to bring it to you all and hope that we have your support on it.
Questions on this item from the board? Bruce?
This is just about the vehicles, and it's really just about the buses. The vehicles people ride in, not even the service vehicles. Right?
Correct. It's just about our vehicles that operate in revenue service that carry passengers, but it also does include some plans for the infrastructure to fuel the buses.
It'd be nice to think of you as a zero emissions institution. In that case, we'd have hydrogen buses, and we'd have buildings that were, the use was all set by solar on the roof or something like that. And we'd have all the workers riding the buses to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what you're talking about is actually a good fit for what we were talking about earlier with this most innovative award, where we put together a climate action plan, and that's a more holistic look at our facilities and our climate efforts at large. And so we do have goals, some rough goals on renewable energy and stuff like that, but it's not quite as formal as this. But yeah, I hear you.
Additional questions from the board on this item? Seeing none, we'll ask for a motion. Do we need a motion to approve your plan? Or are we just going to put this plan in place? Or is your plan ready to be approved, actually? It's probably my better question. Is your plan complete? Is this you said is a draft, is this the completed draft. We don't have any questions about any concepts or anything in here. It's ready to be approved by the board.
It's ready.
I'll
Yeah.
ask for a motion to approve the zero emission transition plan as presented.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the zero emission transition plan. All in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Our next item is a related item, and it is resolution number 2022-5, the Low-No Grant and Bus Facility Grant.
Okay, so like we just talked about 2 items ago where we needed a resolution to submit a grant application. This is a different project, a different grant application, but we're looking for a resolution to be passed for this one along with that zero emission plan, so we can include both of those in the grant application for 10 40-foot fuel cell buses, an expansion to the hydrogen station, some workforce development, training, and some project management. And so you can see the budget, the estimated budget for the grant application on page 54 of your board packets. The local match is about 15%. The reason that's a little bit of a rough number is because this grant typical federal grants require 20% local match, but there are some exceptions allowed in this grant if you're if the vehicle technology is advanced and is zero emissions, and they allow for a lesser local match. So only for some line items though. So anyway, it averages out to about 15% local match that we will apply for this federal funding for this project. The applications are due at the end of May.
Questions from the board, Bruce?
Yeah, back in a way, this question ties into the previous one. We have to have enough solar cell area to cover all these buses now and as we grow. And if we don't, then we don't have an emissions-free plan. And are we doing that? Are we planning that somewhere?
I'm sure Carl wants to answer. I'll just say one thing quickly. One of the options to expand our hydrogen station is to have liquid hydrogen delivered. And liquid hydrogen delivered. And so in that case, we wouldn't be producing the hydrogen on site. We would be purchasing the hydrogen that is produced from renewable energy somewhere else, hopefully in the state or nearby. And the liquid hydrogen would be delivered on site. It's compressed, vaporized, and that is, at least now, the option that makes the most sense for expanding our hydrogen production, our hydrogen fueling station. We wouldn't be expanding production in that case. Do you want to add anything, Carl?
Depends on how that hydrogen is made.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so we would have to require that it's produced from renewable energy.
Solar cell based.
Or wind.
Or
wind,
nuclear.
right.
Yeah, so Bruce, Jane's right. I have lots that I could say. And if you're struggling with insomnia at all, I'd be happy to come over and wax eloquent and put you to sleep on the topic. But real briefly, these 10 buses that are a part of this application, the existing solar array that construction started on last year that is attached to the hydrogen production plant, that accommodates these additional vehicles. So all of that hydrogen will be renewably produced by the solar array. The expansion that Jane is referring to, what we're attempting to do, this is a little outside of directly what we're involved with, but the Department of Energy, the Federal Department of Energy, is they are taking proposals right now on developing 6 hydrogen hubs nationwide. And so a Midwestern hydrogen hub that's funded by the Department of Energy, the intent of that is that it would have capacity to develop renewable hydrogen. And that could be wind, solar, or nuclear, and that would provide a source for us to take delivery of liquid hydrogen, just like we now take delivery of liquid diesel. So a truck would come and deliver it, and hopefully it'd be a hydrogen fuel cell Nikola truck delivering that liquid hydrogen. And so that still fits under the umbrella of what we're trying to do with this partnership with the Department of Energy.
Since we could always have this argument go on and on, the nuclear fuel is not renewable fuel. So that wouldn't technically be a renewable source.
That certainly is a fine point that lots of intelligent people are discussing. I can tell you that the Department of Energy considers nuclear produced hydrogen as green hydrogen, renewably produced hydrogen.
I know they're in favor of the nuclear power, yeah.
Phil.
Not to go off on too far of a tangent, but I did recently have a client who, I'm doing solar development, and our little substation over by Pards, they wanted to hook up to that for a project, and we were told by Ameren we were pretty much at capacity. Would that limit us then on adding additional solar panels to our building, or would we pay to upgrade the substation? Where are we at on that? Have we looked into that at all at this point? Would we be able to add additional either hydrogen capacity with, increasing the size of our service at the plant, or additional solar panels, or both?
We certainly would be having conversations with Ameren. We have been having many conversations with Ameren, but not that very specific one, and that absolutely would be a part of it. There could be substation costs involved. Ameren would bear the cost of that, I believe, but that certainly would be a part of our conversation. Yeah.
And our solar array, our large solar array across the street isn't online yet, but our hydrogen station is pulling off the grid right now. So hopefully that helps once that's plugged in.
We've had a really great relationship with Ameren. They have been fantastic to work with in developing the hydrogen production station. I just a real quick aside. We're very involved with the American Public Transportation Association, and so we are constantly having conversations about zero emission transition within the industry. And the battery electric zero emission buses and the fuel cell electric buses take a lot of energy. And so all across the country, transit systems are either working with or trying to work with their local utilities. And it is across the board a story that transit systems tell that is a difficult process for them. It is the biggest hurdle to get over for every transit agency. And Jane and I have been in several conversations where we're almost embarrassed to have the conversation because our experience with Ameren was so positive. It was so very good that it's almost a little embarrassing to tell our story when everybody else is, the utility. They've been great to deal with. So we will continue that conversation, and I would have to say right now we've got a very positive partnership with them.
All right. Additional questions on Resolution 2022-5 from the board? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2022-5, the low-no grant and bus facilities grant. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Our next item is Resolution 2022-6, the bus facilities grant.
Okay, we are preparing another grant application for the project that we've talked about a little bit with the board, involving upgrading our body shop and creating more storage, vehicle storage for so that we can store the vans that we've been talking about at this meeting, and the the vans that we store for our contracted services at the property not right next door to the 1207 CDL Training Center. So we're applying for some funding to complete that project, and it requires a resolution for the board again, and that's a 20% local match requirement.
Questions on this item? Bruce?
Do we ever want to have a balance of new buses that are emission-free, so to speak? Some hydrogen, some battery? Do we want to ever consider that?
You're asking if we're considering adding battery electric buses to the fleet? Is that your question?
Yeah.
If you look at the red page number is page 46 of your board packet, that shows the fleet composition. And so in blue, you have hydrogen fuel cell buses. In green, you have our diesel electric hybrid buses. And then in orange, you have renewable natural gas buses or CNG buses. And so that is in this plan, that's the fleet composition. I would not ever preclude ownership of battery electric buses. We don't have any in this plan, but there are legitimate circumstances where a battery electric bus can work. But you want to, it's hard for us to make the argument that would be a part of our zero emission transition, because you plug those into the grid and you're in Illinois, we're drawing, our grid is primarily powered by coal-fired plants. And so, it's zero emission at the vehicle, but it's not wheel to well, they say zero emission. So yes, that could be a possibility. It's certainly something that we're open to talking about and looking at, but it's not a part of this current transition plan.
There's a huge solar field down by Sydney that I buy power from. And I'm sure you could buy it from there too. And there's more of that sort of thing coming, private solar fields and probably private wind. We've got a lot of wind already. You can buy by contract from those places. Or the city, for example, you can be on renewable energy gotten from somewhere right now.
Yeah, 100%. We are, two things. One, we are actually in the midst of a conversation right now with a solar, what's the right term? Solar,
It's not a solar developer.
no.
Company?
Sorry, I wasn't prepared to talk about this, so I'm not thinking of the term right off the top of my head. But we are talking to somebody to do something very similar to what you're talking about with the Sydney array, where we would be a primary taker of energy from a solar production plant.
Yeah. So
we are in the midst of that conversation with a provider. For lack of the correct term. That's one thing. The second thing is our main issue with battery electric buses is the operation of them. In cold weather, winter,
excuse me? But they keep getting better. They keep getting longer
if they get
ranges.
better, then great, we'll consider them. But right now, the way the technology exists, the range of battery electric buses does not meet the majority of our vehicles' needs. And you've heard me say we want to be able to put the service on the street that responds to our customers' needs, not our vehicles' needs. And so until the battery electric technology is appropriate for our service, we haven't included that in the transition plan. I agree that technology is advancing and getting better, and there may come a day that the range of a battery of a full bus in the winter months still meets our needs, but we're not there right now.
If you look at the ads from the company or the discussion about their electric buses, they say they've got 250 miles.
I know, and then you talk to any transit agency that operates those vehicles, and they say they get 90 to 100.
And then you got winter too.
And then you have winter.
Yeah.
And then you have full loads of passengers. I mean, I know all of the bus. I was just at a conference last week, and I actually was having the conversation with the president of a bus manufacturer, and he even said, yeah, we're really struggling getting what we tell people that they're going to get. And so, I mean, that was a moment of transparency that he shared with me. I'm not going to mention the name of the company, but they know that in the actual operations, those vehicles are not getting the range that they're advertising. Those ranges they accomplish in ideal situations. And in the real world, it's not an ideal situation.
Phil.
The other thing we're up against, net metering is spectacular, but the way Ameren has to rate it, the sun only shines during the day. Our hydrogen plant is going to run ideally 24/7. So whatever that substation can supply to us at night to run our hydrogen generating station, we're not going to be able to potentially double dip on that and charge buses at the same time. They're going to limit how many KVAs we can pull off in that substation. Now, we may be able to upgrade the substation at some point, but we are going to run into physical constraints with power capacity, and solar, unfortunately, unless we have storage on site, isn't going to cover us on that because of the net metering constraints. We can put power onto the grid during the day, but physically we can only pull so many amps off of Ameren at night when we're generating hydrogen, when we're still running lights, and then if we're trying to do megawatt charging on buses. I mean, we're going to run up against some physical constraints with the power grid at some point. I don't know what those are, but we've got to be pushing it with the amount of solar we have already.
Champaign is almost all on renewable energy.
Oh, absolutely.
All the customers, all the buildings and stuff. No problem. Divide somewhere.
All right. Let's get back on track on what we're on here. Go ahead, Margaret.
This seems kind of petty compared to what we've been discussing, but are there plans to put solar panels on these body shop and storage facilities?
We haven't gotten that far in the architectural and engineering work yet to determine that. That's not included in the budget that I'm showing here in this board memo. So I think it would have to be a separate project, but it's certainly possible.
Certainly something to look at and talk about. It's not going to be a really, really large building with a lot of roof space, though it will have some, so it's possible.
Well, it seems to me so far we've pretty well covered every roof we own, and now we're covering the ground across the street. Maybe we should grab more roofs when we get them.
Any additional questions on Resolution 2022-6? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve this item. It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2022-6, the Bus and Bus Facilities Grant. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Our next item is the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan Revision. Brendan.
Good afternoon. Today I'm presenting the annual revision to the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, commonly referred to as the PTASP, for board approval. This is a revision of the current version which this board approved back in July of 2021. So some of the revisions in this revision are routine updates, and it also includes additional content. The routine updates include updated safety performance targets. These targets are a 5-year rolling average of safety data. So these new figures reflect the 2021 safety data. Some of the other more routine revisions are providing clarity to sections that might have been vague or been items of confusion. Probably the section that received the most attention in this update was the Employee Safety Reporting Program. This is kind of the focus on this section was including close calls and kind of the process involved with managing them, what frontline employees or any employee can really expect, and then what staff will do when they manage, when they respond to them. Close calls are something when SMS that are valuable. We use those to learn more about our operating environment. And we want to encourage employees to report those. So what we've really identified and clearly outlined is that as long as an employee reports a close call and there's no sign of anything negligent or illegal, they're pretty much protected from any punitive action, because we want to learn how this close call happened and what, if anything, we can do to help prevent those.
So describe what you're talking about, a close call. Describe what that would be to an employee, or what they're going to be reporting on.
I can do one better, and I can actually share with you all an experience that we had here in town. We had an employee making a left turn, and he reported that he almost hit a student in the crosswalk. So what we did is we looked into that video, and we identified that no contact was made, so it wasn't an accident. There were no injuries. There was no complaint. It was purely a self-reported close call. We interviewed that employee. We looked into causal factors, and we identified that there were a couple things that may have contributed to that accident. One being glare from the sun based on the time of day. I believe he was facing east around 9 o'clock in the morning, and you can really see in the camera that the quality of the footage changed. It went from light to dark right around the time that this incident happened. So that's a close call. And the outcome of that is, the person got retraining, and some things that we did internally is we created monthly safety campaigns targeting kind of seasonal topics. When students come back, I think it's August or September, the planned safety topic is pedestrian and student safety. Does that answer your question?
Sure. So that generated additional training for all employees, basically, that incident there.
It's yes and no. We're not bringing in all employees to retrain them on that, but it's something that we're going to focus on when we do refresher training. That's
really what I meant.
Classes.
You're going to emphasize that as something to be thinking about, basically.
Absolutely. Now, our training program, we're shifting to more of a data-driven training program. So we start taking information from ops to help fuel changes within our training program. If we're seeing an increase in pedestrian close calls, then you know what, we're going to spend a little bit more time hammering pedestrian safety during training.
Okay. I think Dick's got a question also.
Yes, what criteria do you use to determine whether something's a close call?
So there's multiple kind of categorizations, types. I'll put it. There's multiple types of safety events: accident, incident, a close call. An accident is when there's damage or injury or fatality. An incident is when there might be insignificant disruption to service. And then a close call is kind of when something of those things happen but doesn't. So if there is an injury, a fatality, or damage, that's an accident. If there's an absence of any of those, but it almost got to it, that's a close call.
Is there any incentive or disincentive for an operator to report a close call?
Yes, there is, and that's part of the reason why we have this employee safety reporting program, and that there's no punitive action for reporting a close call, because they're protected from any punitive action for discipline. If they were to self-report a close call and we saw, like, you know what, John Doe was tailgating a car and it almost resulted in an accident, they might not report that because they're worried about being disciplined. So by having these protections in place, we can observe the behavior and put in corrective action to correct that behavior. There's two things that we're looking for. We're looking for individual problems, and we're also looking for systemic problems.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. So, and just to touch base on that more, we do have it. The PTAS does reference a new SOP that kind of helps guide staff on how to communicate close calls to the Safety and Training Department, so we can process these correctly. And we also, in Appendix C, you will see that we have an investigative process to how to manage not just close calls, but accidents that meet certain thresholds. So some of the new content that we included in this update are directly associated with the recently passed bipartisan infrastructure law. One of the requirements of that for all transit systems is that a PTASP must include strategies to minimize exposure to infectious diseases that are consistent with both the CDC and local state guidelines, local or state health guidelines. So we've accomplished this by recognizing CDC and other governmental agencies as sources for hazard identification and mitigation. So, you know, we'll adopt anything that the CDC says to help with these diseases, help mitigate exposure. Excuse me. The other item that is required for our transit system based on the BIL is that we must include frontline employees in the coordination, development, and management of the PTASP. And the key word about this is coordination and not approval. Coordination does not mean approval. What this is basically is we want frontline employee feedback on, is there anything in the PTASP you don't like, that you do like, things you want us to expand on. And we've accomplished this by, if you look at the annual update and approval section of the PTASP, we mentioned that we're going to coordinate with frontline employees. And we were able to accomplish that this year with this current revision. We contacted members of our safety advisory committee and asked them, here's a copy of the PTASP. We're working on an update. Is there anything in here that doesn't make sense to you? Is there anything that you want us to change? And unfortunately, we didn't get any feedback from them this year, but as we resume committees, I'm hoping to work a little bit more in depth with them on that. Yes, sir.
Does the safety portion of this include personal injury, workman's comp issues to your own employees?
Could you rephrase that? So, like, injuries are something that we track in our safety performance measures. Mostly to do with accidents, but as far as any procedural stuff with workers' compensation, this plan doesn't cover that.
The reason why I bring that up is that our insurance company recommended that we had a staff of maintenance staff, et cetera, and we set up a safety committee that we had monthly meetings on that, on chemical use, and if there was an accident on site, we would have one employee in the staff and an administrator, somebody that was in management, go over with the individual as to how it occurred, and we got a reduction in our insurance policy premiums because we instituted it and documented it, and so I just wondered if this incorporates workman comp or injury issues.
It can. Safety promotion is one of the pillars of safety management systems. And what we're doing, again, this is going to reference that close call that I mentioned earlier, is that we're coming up with a seasonal safety campaign. So in November, December, when we start seeing the first signs of ice or snow, we talk about slips, trips, and falls. We talk about how to walk on snow-covered concrete, so that we can proactively reduce the risk of slip, trips, and falls on company property.
Well, again, the reason why we received a reduction in insurance premiums is because we actually had a reduction in claims, and there was, just by having these monthly meetings, people were more aware of being careful in their own personal work around, your maintenance staff in particular. Just a thought.
All right, so so like I was mentioning, that we've accomplished that by asking for feedback from them. We didn't get any feedback. We hope to get feedback in the future once we get them more involved with learning what the PTASP is. It is something new. It's only a couple years old, and we hope to kind of familiarize our frontline employees with it more so. And any questions?
If you hit a student in the crosswalk, but they're going against a red light or a hand, whose fault?
If we hit one or don't hit one? It'll be the operators. Well, it really depends on the circumstances. The law says we have to yield to anyone in the crosswalk.
Period.
Now, if someone enters the crosswalk right as we're making that turn because they're texting on their phone, not paying attention, I mean, that's something I think for attorneys to discuss.
So in such a case, as I just mentioned, that'd be an MTD problem.
Yeah.
This hypothetical is making me really uncomfortable. I don't want to sit here and accept liability for some hypothetical situation. I think our attorney would advise us against doing that. Phil is correct. If that hypothetical that you just mentioned, Bruce, happened, irrespective of whose fault it was, and all likelihood there would be a lot of blame and fault to share. But irrespective of that, it would be an issue that MTD would be dealing with for many years to come.
Additional questions on this item from the board?
Chairman, can I just add, and to piggyback what Carl said, is that the issues of legal liability and the issues of training and safety are two separate things. And so this goes to address training and safety of our drivers, not necessarily legal liability of anything that would happen.
Thank you. Additional questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the revisions to the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve these revisions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Our next item is ordinance number 2022-1, annexing certain territory in the Stone Creek subdivision of Urbana. And thank you, Brendan, for your report. Carl.
Thank you. I don't have anything to add to this. We held a public hearing last week on this, and so I don't have anything to add beyond that.
Anything from the board on this item? Questions? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve.
So moved or seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the annexation described in ordinance 2022-1. Ask for a roll call on this, please.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin. Yes. Delgado,
Yes.
Fasella,
Aye.
Hannon,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. Our next item is Ordinance 2022-2, annexing certain property within Legends of Champaign Phase 1. Any questions on this? Public hearing's already been held on this. Seeing no questions from the board, again, a motion and a second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the annexation described in 2022-2, Legends of Champaign Phase 1. Roll call, please.
Barnes,
Yes.
Chaplin. Delgado,
Yes.
Facilla,
Aye.
Hannon,
Yes.
Nudo,
Yes.
Dial.
Yes, that motion carries. That is our last action item for our meeting today. Our next meeting will be a public hearing for proposed service changes for 2022-23. And that'll be Wednesday, May 18th, 2022 at 5 o'clock here on the 4th floor of the Illinois Terminal. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting for the trustees will be Wednesday, May 25th, 2022 at 3 o'clock right here in the terminal. Are we going to make an announcement? Are we prepared to make an announcement for our special meeting, or are we there yet?
I don't think we're there yet.
Okay. Any other questions from the board at this time? With that, I'll ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
And we are adjourned. Thanks to our friends from the university for coming today. We appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.